We live in a world that glorifies being busy. We wear it like a badge of honor. How much we have on our plate, how little sleep we're getting, how many meetings we have lined up. It's almost as if busyness has become the measure of success. But deep down, you know that something is missing. You feel the weight of all the activity, yet there's an emptiness beneath it. You're running, but you don't know where you're going. You're moving fast, but you're not sure why. That's because activity without purpose leads to emptiness. Being busy isn't the same as being fulfilled. They may look similar on the surface, but they couldn't be more different underneath. Busyness is about filling space. It's about filling time with as much as possible so you don't have to confront the quiet. It's a distraction, a way to avoid sitting with yourself and asking the hard question. What am I doing this for? Does this matter to me? Is this aligned with who I am and what I value? Those are the questions that busyness helps you avoid. When you're constantly moving from one thing to the next, you don't have to face the discomfort of not knowing the answers. But that's exactly why busyness is hollow. It's motion without direction, action without intention. It's like running on a treadmill. You're sweating, you're tired, but you haven't actually gone anywhere. Fulfillment, on the other hand, comes from alignment. It's not about how much you do, it's about why you do it. It's not about how busy your schedule is, it's about whether the things you're doing are meaningful. Fulfillment comes when your actions are connected to a deeper purpose. When you know why you're showing up, why you're putting in the effort, why you're investing your energy, that's when you feel whole. Fulfillment isn't about stacking accomplishments. It's about knowing that what you're doing matters. It's about knowing that your work, your relationships, your efforts, they are adding up to something that aligns with your values and your purpose. But here's the problem. We confuse busyness with fulfillment all the time. We think that if we're doing more, achieving more, checking off more boxes, we'll eventually feel satisfied. So we pile on more commitments, more responsibilities, more tasks, hoping that eventually the emptiness will go away. But it never does. That's because busyness is a bottomless pit. No matter how much you throw into it, it's never full. Busyness keeps you stuck in a loop where more is never enough. It keeps you chasing the next thing, the next achievement, the next milestone, believing that happiness and peace will be waiting for you at the finish line. But they never are, because fulfillment isn't found in the finish line, it's found in the process. It's found in the meaning behind what you're doing, not just the outcome. Sometimes being busy is easier than facing the truth. It's easier to stay distracted than to admit that you don't know why you're doing what you're doing. It's easier to say yes to everything than to sit in the discomfort of saying no. But that's the trap, the idea that more is better. More isn't better. More just means more noise, more distraction, more emptiness. Fulfillment comes from clarity, from knowing what actually matters to you and having the courage to strip away what doesn't. It comes from saying no to the things that don't align with your values so you can say yes to the things that do. When you stop confusing activity with purpose, everything changes. You stop feeling the need to prove yourself by how much you're doing. You stop chasing validation through exhaustion. You stop measuring your worth by how many hours you've worked or how much you've accomplished. And that's when you finally feel peace. Because peace isn't found in how much you do. It's found in knowing that what you're doing matters. Fulfillment isn't about filling your schedule. It's about filling your soul. It's about knowing that you are moving in the right direction, not just any direction. When your actions align with your purpose, you stop feeling restless. You stop searching for something more because you realize that what you have, what you're building, is enough. You can be busy every day of your life and still feel empty at the end of it. But you cannot be fulfilled and empty at the same time. Fulfillment gives you peace. Fulfillment gives you a sense of meaning that no amount of busyness can ever replace. The question isn't how much you're doing, the question is why you're doing it. Because when your actions are driven by purpose, you don't just get things done, you feel alive while doing them. It's easy to get caught up in the whirlwind of daily life, constantly moving, constantly doing, constantly checking off boxes, and still feel like something is missing. You can fill your schedule with meetings, errands, social events, and work, but at the end of the day, you're left feeling drained, not satisfied. That's because fulfillment isn't found in the sheer volume of activity. Motion alone doesn't give life meaning. It's not about how much you do. True fulfillment comes when your actions align with your values, when your effort contributes to something meaningful, and when you connect deeply with the people and experiences around you. Busy people are often running on autopilot, crossing off tasks just to say they've done them. They confuse action with progress and activity with purpose, but depth requires presence. It demands that you slow down enough to reflect on why you're doing what you're doing. When you engage in something deeply, you're not just doing it to get it done. You're doing it because it matters. Fulfillment requires that you're emotionally invested, mentally engaged, and spiritually connected to what you're doing. It's not about the quantity of experiences, it's about the quality. A single meaningful conversation can be more fulfilling than 100 shallow interactions. 1 hour of focused work on something you care about can be more rewarding than an entire week of scattered busyness. Depth requires courage because it means slowing down and being intentional. It's easier to stay busy and distracted than to face the silence and ask yourself the hard questions. Why am I doing this? Is this aligned with who I am and what I value? What impact will this have beyond today? Fulfillment comes when your answers to those questions reveal a deeper purpose. When you choose to focus on fewer things but engage with them more deeply, you stop spreading yourself thin. You stop seeking validation through activity and start finding meaning through connection and contribution. You realize that life isn't about how much you can accomplish in a day, it's about how deeply you can live in each moment. There's a reason why people can feel so exhausted despite being constantly busy. Motion without meaning drains you. It creates a cycle where you're constantly chasing the next thing but never feeling whole. Fulfillment, on the other hand, energizes you. When you're deeply connected to your work, your relationships, and your purpose, you don't feel depleted, you feel alive. Even when the work is hard, even when the challenges are real, you feel a sense of inner alignment that keeps you grounded. That's because fulfillment comes from knowing that what you're doing matters. It's not about perfection or constant success. It's about knowing that your effort is aligned with something greater than yourself. Busy people often measure their days by how much they accomplish. Fulfilled people measure their days by how deeply they engage. A busy person might have 15 meetings in one day and still feel empty at the end of it. A fulfilled person might spend an hour in meaningful conversation and feel deeply connected and satisfied. The difference isn't the length of time, it's the depth of engagement. When you're busy, you're focused on the outcome. When you're fulfilled, you're focused on the experience. Being present in the moment, listening fully, working with intention, connecting authentically, is what gives life richness. It's not about how fast you move. It's about how present you are while you're moving. Fulfillment requires that you stop looking for external rewards to validate your effort. Busyness often comes from the need to be seen as productive or valuable, but true fulfillment comes when you stop looking for approval and start doing things because they matter to you. It's when you stop asking, "What will people think of this?" and start asking, "Does this align with who I am?" Fulfillment comes when you find internal alignment, when your actions reflect your values, your work reflects your passion, and your relationships reflect authenticity. When you reach that place, you stop chasing validation and start experiencing peace. You don't need to prove anything because you know you're on the right path. Depth is uncomfortable because it requires vulnerability. It means opening yourself up, asking hard questions, and sometimes facing uncomfortable truths. But that's where fulfillment lives. It's in the willingness to engage deeply, even when it's uncomfortable, that you find real connection and purpose. Shallow living might feel easier in the moment, but it leaves you feeling empty. Depth requires that you slow down, sit with your thoughts, and engage fully with the people and experiences in front of you. That's where life's richness is found. You don't need to be doing more, you need to be living deeper. The world will tell you that being busy is a sign of success, but the truth is that depth is a sign of fulfillment. The question isn't how much you're doing, it's how much of yourself you're bringing into what you do. When you stop seeking validation through activity and start finding meaning through connection and purpose, that's when you'll understand the difference between motion and fulfillment. That's when you'll feel the weight of busyness lift and the peace of true purpose settle in. It's natural to want recognition, to feel like your efforts are seen and appreciated. That's part of being human. But the danger comes when you start building your sense of worth entirely on that recognition. When your value becomes tied to other people's approval, you lose control over your own happiness. External validation is fleeting, it's inconsistent, it comes and goes depending on the mood of the crowd, the shifting trends, and the unpredictable opinions of others. But inner satisfaction, that's something no one can take from you. It's not dependent on applause or recognition. It comes from knowing deep down that you are aligned with your purpose and acting in integrity with your values. The problem with seeking external validation is that it creates a cycle of dependency. When your confidence is tied to how others perceive you, you give them control over your emotional state. A compliment can lift you up, but one negative comment can bring you crashing down. You become trapped in a cycle where you are constantly performing, constantly adjusting yourself to meet other people's expectations. And the more you chase validation, the emptier you feel. Because deep down, you know that no amount of praise can fill the void left by not being true to yourself. No amount of recognition can compensate for the feeling that you've betrayed your own values just to be accepted. Inner satisfaction, on the other hand, comes from a place of authenticity. It's quiet. It's not flashy or loud. It's the feeling of knowing you showed up honestly, did your best, and acted in alignment with who you are, even if no one else noticed. It's not about being praised for your work. It's about knowing your work mattered. It's not about being liked. It's about knowing you stayed true to your principles. When you're driven by inner satisfaction, you stop looking for permission to feel good about yourself. You stop waiting for someone else to tell you that you're enough. You stop performing and start living. The problem with external validation is that it's addictive. The more you get, the more you crave. When you start basing your self-worth on the opinions of others, you lose touch with your internal compass. You start bending and twisting yourself to fit the mold that others expect. You start saying yes when you want to say no. You start holding back your true thoughts because you're afraid they'll be rejected. You start playing a role instead of living authentically, and eventually you realize that you've lost yourself in the process. Inner satisfaction requires courage. It requires that you stop looking outside for approval and start looking inward for truth. It means measuring your success not by how others respond, but by how aligned you feel with your purpose. It means defining success not by the size of the crowd, but by the depth of your integrity. When you stop needing others to validate you, you find a strength that can't be shaken. You stop feeling the need to explain yourself. You stop justifying your choices. You stop seeking approval and start living from a place of quiet confidence. Seeking validation is exhausting because it puts you on a treadmill that never stops. You feel good when you get a positive response, but it never lasts. You always need more, and the moment that approval fades, you're left feeling empty. But when you shift your focus from external recognition to internal alignment, you break free from that cycle. You stop running after approval and start resting in the quiet confidence that comes from knowing you are enough as you are. You stop asking, "What will people think?" and start asking, "Does this align with who I am?" That's when you stop feeling like you're constantly chasing something and start feeling grounded in yourself. It's easy to get caught up in the game of recognition, the likes, the praise, the status. But recognition is a poor foundation to build your life on. It's fragile. It can be taken away at any moment. But inner satisfaction, that comes from doing what you know is right, even when no one else is watching. It comes from showing up honestly, working hard, and knowing that you acted with integrity. When you live from that place, you stop feeling the need to prove yourself. You stop trying to control how others see you, because you know who you are. And that kind of self-assurance is unshakable. Inner satisfaction is not about perfection. It's about alignment. It's about knowing that even when things don't work out the way you hoped, even when you face setbacks or criticism, you can still stand tall because you know you acted from a place of truth. It's about knowing that your value isn't determined by how others respond. It's determined by how true you've been to yourself. That's why inner satisfaction is more powerful than external validation. It's not about being seen, it's about knowing you've shown up authentically. It's not about being praised, it's about knowing you've lived with integrity. And when you reach that place, you stop seeking permission to feel good about yourself, because you already know you're enough. We live in a world that worships productivity. The more you do, the more valuable you are, or at least that's the message you've been fed. Success is measured in output, in accomplishments, in how busy you can stay. But the truth is, productivity without presence is empty. You can fill your days with tasks, cross off every item on your to-do list, and still feel like you're falling behind. That's because life isn't about how much you can accomplish. It's about how present you are while you're doing it. Productivity is about movement. Presence is about connection. And connection is what brings life its deepest meaning. The problem with being focused only on productivity is that it reduces life to a series of boxes to check off. You rush from one task to another, constantly measuring your worth by how much you've achieved. But in that constant rush, you miss the moments that matter. You sit down for a meal with family, but your mind is elsewhere, thinking about the next project or the next meeting. You go for a walk, but instead of noticing the warmth of the sun or the sound of the wind, you're checking your phone for updates. You're physically present, but mentally you're somewhere else. And that's why you feel disconnected. That's why, no matter how much you accomplish, it never feels like enough, because you weren't truly present for any of it. Presence means slowing down. It means giving your full attention to the moment in front of you. It's about listening when someone is speaking, not just hearing them, but truly being there with them. It's about noticing the details, the sound of laughter, the texture of the food you're eating, the feeling of the ground beneath your feet. Presence isn't about doing more, it's about being more. It's about bringing your full self into the moment, instead of constantly looking ahead to what's next. When you're fully present, even the simplest experiences take on a deeper meaning. A conversation with a friend becomes a source of connection. A walk becomes a moment of peace. A quiet evening at home becomes an opportunity to reflect and reset. We've been taught that stillness is laziness, that if you're not constantly moving, constantly producing, you're falling behind. But that's a lie. Stillness is not laziness, it's awareness. It's the ability to stop and breathe, to center yourself, to take stock of where you are and what you feel. When you slow down, you create space for clarity. You start to see what matters and what doesn't. Productivity can fill your calendar, but presence fills your soul. It's easy to fall into the trap of thinking that more equals better, that the more hours you work, the more valuable you are. But the truth is, you're not defined by how much you do. You're defined by how deeply you live. You can work 80 hours a week and still feel empty because you've lost connection with yourself and the people around you. But when you start choosing presence over productivity, you begin to feel whole again. You start noticing the little things, the way someone's face lights up when you give them your full attention, the sense of calm that comes from sitting in silence without distraction, the quiet strength that comes from knowing you're exactly where you need to be. Presence allows you to reclaim your time. It shifts your focus from quantity to quality. Instead of trying to fill every moment with activity, you start valuing the depth of each moment. You stop rushing through life and start savoring it. You begin to realize that you don't need to accomplish more to feel fulfilled. You need to experience more. You need to stop trying to do it all and start allowing yourself to simply be. When you live with presence, you give yourself permission to breathe. You stop feeling guilty for resting. You stop measuring your day by how much you got done and start measuring it by how present you were for the moments that mattered. It's not about abandoning productivity, it's about balancing it with presence. You can still work hard, you can still set goals and chase after them, but you need to make sure you're not losing yourself in the process. Success without presence is hollow. But when you combine focus with presence, effort with awareness, you unlock a sense of fulfillment that isn't tied to achievement, it's tied to alignment. Presence is a gift. It's a way of reclaiming your life from the endless pressure to do more, be more, achieve more. It's about realizing that your value isn't tied to your output. It's about knowing that you are enough, even when you're not crossing things off a list. When you choose presence over productivity, you stop feeling like you're constantly falling behind. You stop feeling like life is passing you by. You start feeling grounded, centered, whole. And that's where real fulfillment begins. We live in a culture that constantly encourages us to consume. More things, more experiences, more information. The idea is that the more you have, the happier you'll be. But the reality is that no amount of consumption will ever fill the void inside you. You can buy the latest gadgets, chase the next big thing, surround yourself with everything you think you need. But if your life is only about taking in, you'll always feel like something is missing. That's because fulfillment doesn't come from consumption, it comes from what you give, not what you get. Consumption is about filling yourself. Contribution is about pouring yourself out. And that's where real meaning lies. Think about the moments in your life that have left the deepest impact. Was it the time you bought something new? Or was it the time you helped someone through a difficult moment? Was it the time you added another possession to your life? Or was it the time you gave someone your time, your energy, your heart? True fulfillment isn't found in acquiring more. It's found in becoming more by giving more. The reason consumption leaves you feeling empty is because it's designed to. The more you consume, the more you crave. It creates a cycle of wanting, chasing, and feeling momentarily satisfied before the emptiness returns. That's because consumption is surface level. It touches the exterior of your life, but leaves the core untouched. Contribution, on the other hand, works from the inside out. When you give, when you create, when you make a difference in someone else's life, that's when you feel truly alive. Contribution taps into something deeper. It reminds you that you are part of something larger than yourself. It shifts the focus from what you lack to what you can offer. And when you focus on what you can offer, you stop feeling like something is missing. We've been conditioned to believe that happiness comes from taking in more. More success, more wealth, more recognition. But real fulfillment comes from the opposite, from giving more of yourself to the world. Contribution takes courage because it asks you to show up. It asks you to give your time, your energy, your creativity, your heart. But that's exactly why it's so powerful. When you contribute, you put a piece of yourself into the world. You leave a mark. And in doing so, you create a sense of connection that consumption can never give you. Contribution isn't always about grand gestures. It's not about changing the world overnight or making a huge impact. Sometimes it's as simple as listening to someone who needs to be heard, offering advice to someone who feels lost, giving your time to help someone with no expectation of getting anything in return. These moments of contribution may seem small, but they create ripples. They create connection. They remind you that your existence matters, not because of what you have, but because of what you give. Consumption is easy, it's passive. Contribution is hard, it's active. It requires effort, it requires vulnerability. It asks you to put yourself on the line, to open your heart, to care deeply even when it's uncomfortable. But that's why it matters. That's why it's transformative. Because in giving, you discover who you really are. You realize that you are not defined by what you own or what you've achieved. You're defined by how you show up for others, by how you leave people better than you found them, by how much of yourself you're willing to pour into the lives of those around you. It's tempting to think that you need to accumulate more before you can give, that you need to reach a certain level of success before you can start making a difference. But that's a lie. Contribution isn't about giving from a place of abundance, it's about giving from a place of intention. You don't need to have it all together to make a difference. You just need to show up. You need to offer what you have, even if it feels small. Even if you're not sure it will matter. The act of giving itself is what creates meaning. Consumption can never fill you because it's rooted in lack. It's built on the idea that you are not enough as you are, that you need more to feel whole. Contribution is the opposite. It's rooted in the understanding that you already have enough to make an impact, that you are enough. When you contribute, you affirm your own value. You prove to yourself that you are capable of making a difference. And that's where fulfillment comes from, not from getting more, but from giving more. Contribution creates a sense of purpose that consumption never will. It shifts your focus from yourself to others. It takes you out of the endless cycle of wanting and into a place of generosity and connection. And when you give from that place, you feel grounded, you feel whole, you feel alive. Because true fulfillment isn't found in how much you have, it's found in how much you give. Fulfillment doesn't come from doing more, it comes from being more. From aligning your actions with your purpose and from choosing depth over motion, connection over validation, and contribution over consumption. Because a life that is full is not the same as a life that is truly fulfilled.